Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Block Party number 25. Yay. This is our 25th consecutive 24-hour block party, bringing us all together, transforming life on Earth, saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. Alrighty, and welcome to the Divine Feminine. I'm going to turn it over to my sister Jackie and my queen Melissa, who have been kind enough to invite our special guest, Mr. Rohan, who I will let Jackie introduce formally. Thank you so much, Jackie's sister, and my queen Melissa for creating the Divine Feminine. And please take it away, Jackie.
Hello, welcome everyone again to another edition of this block party, this community, this sacred space where we come together to create healing and create solutions, co-create solutions for the new world that we all know is coming. And we've had Mr. Rohan Williams before, aka Crazy, with us before on the Vegans of Color, and he has so much wisdom and he has so much to contribute to the Divine Feminine that I was just compelled to invite him back to the Divine Feminine and share his perspective. He has so much insight into the origins of we people of color and our connection to earth, our connection to divinity, our connection to food. And this is some of the topics he will be discussing today on both segments. So with no further ado, I really would like to invite Rohan Kwesi to come and share his perspective. Welcome to the Divine Feminine. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Jackie. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Greetings, one and all, and I thank you so much for taking the time to sit and listen and hear me speak on a topic that's very dear to me. I will come to you from the perspective of the ancient African culture, speaking on the Divine Feminine. I have some notes I'm going to be referring to. So let me bring that up here so I can see that. All right, so let's start off with the definition of divine from the African perspective. In the African culture, the divine is seen as the totality of everything. The omnipotent, meaning the all-powerful, the omnipresent, meaning everywhere at the same time, the omniscient, meaning all knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, the all, the causation and the sustainer of the universe. So when we speak of God, of the Creator, we're not just thinking of a being out there somewhere. We see it as the entirety of the cosmic universe, us included. So everything that exists is literally connected in the all. Now, that's the definition of the divine. The divine feminine in the African culture is what we see as the first being that the causation of the universe manifested, and that manifestation was first seen in the woman. In fact, she was, in English we call her woman, W-O-M-A-N. In the African cultural science, we see it as the womb, W-O-M-B-M-A-N, containing not only the feminine, but also the masculine. Man, as a definition, consists of both the masculine and the feminine, master, able, and noble, body, mind, and spirit, holistic. So both the male and the female is in the first being. And everyone that continues to, has existed on the planet down to today, came from that first being. So you can literally extrapolate yourself from that first being, because all the reproductive organs, all the eggs of every person that existed was encapsulated in that first woman. From the African perspective, we look at the human body and its systems comprise of what we consider the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. And that also is representative of the male and the female. For example, when you're inhaling and exhaling, those are sympathetic and parasympathetic systems that are operating from the autonomic side of the body. So when you're inhaling, that's considered a male sympathetic response. When you're exhaling, that's considered a female parasympathetic response. And so from the African cultural perspective, the totality of everything, giving birth to an aspect of itself called man, the female, and the male, is how we see the divine feminine. We are an aspect of the Creator having a human experience. And so we also see ourselves as co-creators. In fact, you see that in the process of having children and giving birth. You're literally a microcosmic order of the universe bringing forth life. And so the process of complementary brought the male and the female together and gave birth, life, similar to what's going on when the universe created itself and manifested itself as planets, then manifested itself as water, then manifested itself as air and oxygen, then manifested itself as the first moving creatures in the ocean, then manifested itself as flowers, as birds, as bees, then manifested itself. It created everything. Everything was in place and in order and perfection by the time it caused itself to create the first divine feminine, the womb man. So the causation of the universe manifested everything in abundance necessary for maximum holistic health, wealth, and eternal sustenance. Only when we move back in time to that period do we find the ultimate state of perfection. In the African culture, we call that the cosmological, ecological worldview, and we encapsulate that in a term called Ma'at. In 1974, archaeologists discovered a fossil in an Ethiopian village. It's called Hadar, and I'm not sure if you probably have heard it, but that fossil dated back to 3.2 million years old. The name of that fossil is Dinknesh, and it means you are amazing. Dinknesh. The genetic coding that was discovered in that fossil contains all the variations of people on the planet today. So we have literal, factual evidence now that we are connected to that branch, to a fossil that's 3.2 million years. We all know that the Earth goes back billions of years. So how far back does man go? How far back does woman go? How far back do we have to go to find that original being, the divine feminine? The concept of Ma'at consists of seven principles. And in the African cultural system, as we build civilizations, which starts with the family, which then goes out into neighborhoods and community, then villages, then nations, and so on. We found that as we studied our cosmology, as we studied our ecology, as we studied our environment and our human interaction, these 7 principles were brought to the fore such that we could live in harmony, not only with ourselves and with the planet, but with those around us. And the 7 principles are truth, justice, right doing, reciprocity, balance, order, and harmony. Central to the African culture, Ma'at is another way of referring to the culture from a perspective of mother. So Ma'at is Ma culture, the mother culture. The mother of the parent people of the planet. Every culture has its mythology. Every culture has its ways of seeing the origin of the planet. In the African culture, the core of the culture of Ma'at was represented by the mother, the father, and the child. The elders also play a very vital role, because we know that as we age, after being parents, we eventually become elders in the community. So the elders also are crucial, because they held the knowledge of the experience of time. They held the knowledge of the experience of history, and the mode of transmission of history, which is something that I think is still quite overlooked. It was overlooked in the past, in the recent past, and still quite overlooked today, is the oral way of transmitting history, the oral tradition. That was the mode of transmission for thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of years, to transmit history, to transmit knowledge. We have a term for that person in the African culture. He's called the Jele. D-J-E-L-E, I think is one of the spelling of that. Or the griot, I think, in French. But that person was the knowledge bearer. He could recite the histories of the past, going back hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of generations. And his role still exists today. And you still see it in many, many African cultures. There is an advance, well, I say advance, let's say another category of that characteristic that is embodied in a person. And when you step up to that level, you are considered a Doma, D-O-M-A. The difference between the Jale and the Doma is that the Doma cannot lie. So the Jale, even though he may not be lying, is allowed to embellish. He's allowed to make his presentation entertaining, for example, keep your attention. But the Doma is not allowed to lie. There's a story that I've heard where a Doma, in order to protect the life of a female, did not disclose the truth about her being hidden in his place. And after the situation was all cleared up, he went to the community of the Domas and says, I have to now step aside. I can no longer be trusted to tell the truth, even though he did it to save a life. So that's how important these roles and characteristics are in the African worldview. Now, comparing and contrasting where we are today with the principles of Ma'at, we find ourselves in a world where we're surrounded by falsity instead of truth. We're dealing with a lot of injustice instead of justice, a lot of wickedness instead of righteousness and right doing. We have a lot of competition instead of reciprocity. In fact, pretty much our entire cultural economic dynamic is based on competition. Instead of balance, we are now surrounded by imbalance. Instead of order, disorder. Harmony is now replaced by disharmony. These principles are not separated or fragmented or work by themselves apart from each other. They are all intertwined. So, for example, I'm from Jamaica, and we have little tidbits of common sense sayings that our parents would say to us. You know, it says, one is, every liar is a thief, or every thief is a murderer. They'll take your life. They're interconnected. It's a holistic system. So there can be no justice if there is no truth. There can be no balance if there is no order. There can be no harmony if there is not reciprocity. So these principles makes the person whole, the individual, and it orders the family, and then it orders the community at large. When they are missing, we find ourselves in cultures that are at war with each other, from the individual level, the state, local level, the nation, the state level, the nation level, and the interaction between foreign policies between nations. When we contrast that culture of Ma'at to the cultures that we see around the world today, you see how vast we have stepped away from the culture that was on the planet when we got the divine feminine. All the issues, the male domination and the female suppression issues that we see in the world today, you can see why. We have stepped away into a culture where the core of operation, the modus operandi, is actually war. Just recently, we added another $10 to $20 billion to our US military budget. It's now over $740 billion. We are just 4.2%, 4.25% of the world population, yet we spend roughly the size of the 7 next nations' military budget. That's how much we spend. 4.25% of the size of the world population, and our military budget is the summation of roughly the next 7 largest nations. And so that's 37% of the total military expenditures on the planet. If we are going into a world where we want harmony and peace and order and balance, we got to figure out how that money is going to be spent towards peace and order and balance, and not towards war. The more we spend on military and arming ourselves, what's happened is that comes back to us. And we can see it today. You see it in the riots. Now our military is turning on the American people. We're getting snatched off the streets with people in military garb that's unidentifiable. We're being put in cars that is unmarked. We're being taken to locations we have no idea where we're ending up. So I'm just putting these pointers out so that you can see how vastly far we have moved from the divine feminine, the culture that existed on the planet when we had the wholesomeness and the harmony. My challenge to you all now is what we're going to do about this. In the African cultural worldview context, we have a process, a ritual, a ceremony, a returning back to, and it's called Sankofa. And Sankofa is represented by a bird with his neck turned back towards its tail. And that symbology is how we portray us going back in time, going back to our ancestral order, going back all the way back, which we need to at least study and honor the divine feminine. How do we do that? Right now, I'm gonna say where you are right now is what you could consider your comfort zone. Whether you kind of like it there or you don't, that's where you find yourself. So in that comfort zone surrounding it is what is considered the fear zone. And that fear zone cripples people from stepping out of their comfort zone. It also prevents you from developing to your fullest potential. And because it's such a fearful thing to step out of that comfort zone, we tend not to want to push the limits, because when you do, you begin to ask questions. You begin to desire answers to those questions. It could create disharmony in your life, for one, in the life of your family, your children, in the life of your community, your churches, in the life of your schools, your political affiliates, and can you navigate through life being that person who stands alone, being that person willing to push the limit? So it's a fearful zone to get through, and it cripples a lot of people from developing to their fullest potential. Once you determine where you are, you got to determine if things are okay or if another path is desired. When you decide to go through that fear zone, you got to determine what are you willing to give up to gain a higher knowledge, a better understanding of things around you. When I started my journey, the fearful thing was I didn't know where I was going to end up. But I know I wasn't going back. So it has its trepidations, and but the rewards of that I have received from stepping out is something that I treasure and would never give up to go back. So it's quite uncomfortable getting through that comfort zone, that fears getting out of your comfort zone through that fear zone. Once you get out of that fear zone, you're into what is considered the learning zone. So in that learning zone, the quest there for me was truth. Dr. Joy DeGruy, a social scientist, makes a statement that has ever stuck with me from the very first time I've heard it. And so I'm going to repeat it here for you. Her name is Joy, Joy, Degruy. She says, truth is so fundamental to every aspect of who we are. It is the foundation of all human virtues. Without truthfulness, you cannot attain into any other virtue. So if you go back to the 7 principles of Ma'at, the first was truth. You can forget the rest if you're not willing to deal with the truth. You cannot grow as a human being, and you certainly cannot be healthy. She continues by saying, could it be that we have too many secrets? She says, it is the secrets that makes us sick. And it's the denial of the truth that keeps us sick. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so in taking on the process of Sankofa, one has to seek out master teachers. I have many master teachers. I don't know if I could have made this journey without them. Cherish them, they are precious. Appreciate them, because their time and energy that you will take from them is precious to them, more so than you are to them. Usually, by the time a person becomes a master teacher, they realize how little time they have for their journey to be complete. And so when they take the time to assist and help, they are cutting into their learning time, their growth time, their time to go find that divine feminine order. So master teachers are not to be trifled with. They are to really be appreciated and held in high esteem. Don't drain them. It takes a lot of energy to take us from confused states that we're in to back to wholeness. Actually, the same amount of energy and time that was put in to take us to where we currently are is almost the same amount of energy time, not necessarily your time, but energy time to take you back to wholeness. So time is such a crucial parameter here to be respected and honored and cherished. And so master teachers have very, very little time to be wasted. And if you're wasting your time, they'll walk away, very easily walk away. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. The second thing, which is, the first is do an analysis of your comfort zone. The second is find master teachers. And they don't necessarily have to be alive. Many master teachers have left their works with us in writings, in books. So, you know, we live in an age where we can find a book on the internet like that. Probably if it's out of print, out of copyright time frame, you can actually probably even get the PDF for free. When I started my journey, I was spending thousands of dollars per month to acquire books, every month. And so the internet wasn't around. And that was what it was required of me. I had to put the energy in to acquire their works, their writings, so that I could get the information that was necessary, especially for those masters who had passed away. So today it's a whole lot more easy. I mean, you're still paying that whatever that monthly fees for your internet, but utilize it. You know, grab these books, go listen to the lectures of these teachers. The next step is to undo the falsity of history, because now you got to study your ancestral connections. You got to start looking back at your ancestors to get back to the divine feminine, to get back to the original DNA. Now, history is not a pretty sight. And you have to be willing to deal again with the truth of history. And you got to reconcile that within yourselves, and you got to do whatever it takes to go through that trauma and deal with that. And set the record straight for the future that we want to create. That's a lot of work, especially on cultures that have been dominant and imperialistic across the planet. But it's a work that needs to be done if we want to get back to truth, which is the only way you're going to get back to the other virtues. You got to pass through truth. So we have great obstacles in our way. All the industrial complexes that we have created on the planet that do not portend to life, we're going to have to deal with that. We have industrial complexes that pollutes the air, pollutes the water, pollutes your body with synthetic food, drugs masquerading as foods. So we have a plethora of things that we're going to have to navigate our way through. That is, in my opinion, the path of how we will get back to the omnipotence, the omnipresence, the all-knowing, the omniscient. It is essential, especially as we see that if we continue the path that we are on, the planet is going to explode. And I think the riots we're seeing in the streets are telling us that that's where we're heading. People are willing to put their life on the line. It's impressive to see mothers standing shoulder to shoulder between riot police and protesters, saying, we are going to make sure that people have a right to speak. That's the feminine energy coming again. That's the divine feminine stepping out saying, enough is enough. we men have messed up the planet. We have messed it up. And we got to give the feminine energy a chance to bring the harmony back. Otherwise, we're going to self-destruct. I see no other change of course. One of my great American philosophers that I listen to, and I'm so glad that he's still around, but probably not for much longer, is Professor Noam Chomsky out of MIT, who have been speaking for decades. You guys, you're heading down the wrong path. But nobody's listening to him. We gotta listen to our master teachers. He's definitely a master teacher when it comes on to what's wrong in our polity around the planet. He won't be around us for long, much longer. When I went to Egypt in 2000, that was one of the major reasons, because the gentleman, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, was getting up there in age. Dr. Clark, John Henry Clark, had died, and I'm like, hold on, these guys won't be around much longer. So if I want to go to Egypt with Dr. Ben, I gotta plan my trip now. And so I jumped on that, and next year, and it turned out that that one was one of his last trips to Egypt. So if we don't do it, all we're doing is we're postponing it to be done by a later generation. So the work begins with us. And the question is, the young people today say the older generation failed us. And that hurts. That really hurts me. Even though I have no children, it hurts. Because all this knowledge I've acquired, it was for my children. That was my first purpose, because you see, the family unit was what my core driver was. The mother, father, child. So everything I had was going to be transmitted to my offspring. So now I transmit it to you. I transmit it to my niece and nephews. I transmit it to the people I come across in my classes. Melvin. Hey, Melvin. And he just okay, what about this? What about that? What about this? So I love his energy. And oh man, he takes all my knowledge from me when he sits me down. We talk for hours. And that's my joy. My joy is to share what I've learned on my journey. And it's still not complete. I have still so many books to go through. And on my journey, books I've picked up. There's a 2-volume set. Over probably 15, 20 years, I still have not cracked the cover, even though I know the author. This is Natural Genesis by Gerald Massey, gentleman who lived in the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. Is there a copyright? 1883. So we have a lot of information that we got to go cover. The Arnold Hertz, a German from 1922. Frederick Otto Hertz, who wrote Race and Civilization, I think 1928. So there is a plethora of information as we start this journey to go back, to study history, to put back in place the things that have been falsified. So I leave you with that. I don't know if I address the divine feminine as much as you were expecting, but I shared with you how we see it from the African perspective as the first being manifested on the planet, um, uh, containing within her the male and the female principles, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Still today, we utilize those male and female principles. In fact, the Tai Chi that I teach is from a feminine complementary male principle, because we still honor that within our body. And one of the huge reasons we do that is to maintain our health as we get older. What we found was when we only practice from the masculine side, our masters, as they got older, began to deteriorate their own bodies. So they ended up destroying their internal organs and deteriorating the joints in their body, in their bones. So it's a principle that we have always honored in the African culture. The principle of Ma'at, the 7 principles of Ma'at, is like the enclosure of the totality. Now you add all the laws and principles that we abide by, you know, because even in Ma'at, there are 42 laws, but all can be distilled down into those 7 principles. And if, for me, just simply keeping those 7, keeping it simple in my brain is how I navigate through my day, navigate through life. Because if I do all those 7 principles, I should be okay. I should be in harmony. I should be in balance with each and every one around me. Any questions? I guess that pretty much sums it up for me. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
I've taken a lot of notes, but we do have some questions. I do want to get back later because Melvin and I have had many conversations about the female, the feminine, and the masculine in the Tai Chi and the martial arts.
Yeah.
So I would like to invite you to kind of help us understand a little bit more. But Summer has a question. If you could go over the principles again, the Mahat principles,
Okay.
and explain those a little bit more for her.
Sure. So, Ma'at, 7 principles, is an ancient system of morals and values that guided thought, behavior in the ancient Kemet system. And it was also found throughout many cultures across the African continent. Truth is the first principle, and truth is distilling what is factual from what is falsehood. And honoring what is factual. When we take information in that is truthful, it resonates with the body. This is part of the divine feminine. It resonates with the body and all the way down to the cells of the body. If it's truthful, your body will respond in a chemical fashion. If it's truthful, it will resonate harmoniously with your cells. If you take information in that is false and claim it to be true, it also resonates in the body. It also generates a chemical response. However, it will not be harmonious to your body. It's what we call dis-ease. Disease, dis-ease. Your body is not at ease. Your body can differentiate between that which harmonizes with nature and that which is antagonistic to nature, because you are designed by the divine feminine. It was designed in nature. The totality of everything you needed was put on the planet Earth in abundance for you to have the maximum holistic life that you could potentially have. We live in a society today where we have a lot of technology around us. For example, we get electricity and lights. When the divine feminine was put on the planet, she went to bed when the sun went down. So today we're up midnight, 2 o'clock, sometime all night. Sometimes we work at nights. So we're totally out of the cyclic harmony of the cosmos. So you find that people who work at night, their circadian rhythm is thrown completely off. There's a lot of chemicals that gets generated in the body to allow you to sleep, to regenerate. And then as the sun comes up, because you're connected to these planets, you're not just an individual, you're connected to the sun, the moon, and each and every planet out there. Every one of them has an effect on the earth. That means it has an effect on you. And when we are out of order with that, we create an imbalance. Justice. Justice is the state of equity, but also justice is love. However, where there is any place on the planet where injustice reigns, there is no justice. And so, if we don't restore the truth, we can't get back to justice. And we need justice restored so that we can love each other. Righteousness, a state of right doing, a state of knowing that what you do has a constructive effect versus a non-constructive effect. When you think a thought, your thinking is actually frequencies of light. That gets transmitted into a chemical called a neurotransmitter. That neurotransmitter communicates its messages now throughout your entire body and causes you to act in accordance to the message that was transmitted. The action is called doing. Again, if you think something and don't do it, you create a state of imbalance called dis-ease. Reciprocity could be looked at as karma. What goes around comes around. Could be looked at as competition, opposite to competition, where me, selfish me, I want it all, and I can't get enough. It's the opposite of that. Is that whatever how I would like to be treated is how I'm going to treat you, and it has to be a constructive treatment, not a destructive treatment. There's a whole lot more about reciprocity. It's character building, actually. Growing into your full character. Balance. Balance is kind of tricky because a lot of times we think of balance as having equal weight on both sides. Well, nature doesn't balance in the middle. Nature balances at the higher frequencies for the divine feminine, the womb man. There are certain things that causes you to vibrate at low frequencies, and there are certain things that cause you to vibrate at higher frequencies. And I'll talk more about this when we talk this evening on health. And we'll see what categories different foods falls in terms of the frequency range. Order. That's a lot along the line of discipline. Or you could look at it as what comes out of chaos. So when we had our supernova and all the stars and pieces of stardust got spat out into the universe, eventually they organized themselves and became ordered entities. And through that order, we know the cycles of the day, the week, the month, the year, the precessions, etc. But the individual order is staying in tune with those cycles, staying in tune with your elimination cycle, staying in tune with your appropriation cycle, staying in tune with your assimilation cycle, getting the right amount of sleep, going to bed, etc. That order, that discipline, getting up and keeping your word, keeping your commitments, etc. Ordering your life, discipline, harmony. I use an example here. Many of us have at times stepped into a room and sensed the energy in the room and said, "Ooh, I don't need to be in this one." There is a connection between each and every one of us. And that connection exists whether we're together or we're apart. If I think about you, I can literally transmit to you through the ether what we do using phones. It's the same technology. Actually, your brain is doing it. We just captured it in a phone and designed it and put it in a chip. There's no wires connected to this thing. So everything goes through the ether. Well, it's just a frequency, and your thoughts are frequencies. You can transmit it through the ether. So we can communicate when we get back in balance and order with nature. We literally are in such a harmony that we can literally communicate via thought instead of words. And we also communicate with the energy that we expel from our being. Because whatever we think, the cells respond, that response creates a certain vibration, and that vibration is transmitted out from you. And that is the law of attraction. Whatever you transmit out, you attract. So I hope that in summary, that covers those principles for that question. What was your question again, Jackie?
Well, I want to save my questions and make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask, but I think, Jamin, I can't see if anyone else has their hand raised, but I see Melissa has her hand raised.
Rohan, thank you so much for
You are welcome.
teaching us the teachings of the teachers and your own teaching ways within the teachings. It's so eloquent, and my cells really are full of sunshine listening to you. And it so resonates with what I also understand of the universe and the world and how to live in it. And one thing that is coming to me listening to just the last segment of you explaining the 7 principles is how our education system has really removed us from those teachings. And my own personal education was really out in nature, and I grew up on an island, a Greek island in the Mediterranean, and I went to British schools, but my mother, God bless her, allowed me to spend more time out of school than in school, which I actually think really saved me. Because my friends and my teachers were the rocks and the birds and the trees and the desert and all the things that I connected with when I was out wandering the island. And so I just wanted to bring it back to you now about what do you think about the education system and how we're bringing up children in view of what you're sharing. Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm jealous of you because that's the kind of childhood that I think a lot of children are missing. I can relate because I spent my first 17 years growing up in Jamaica. And in Jamaica, the outdoors was where we spent most of our time, going to the rivers, eating mangoes, chasing the goats. And so you can imagine my culture shock when I came to New York and I could not see dirt. I saw nothing but concrete. Even in the playgrounds were covered with plastic, rubber mats. And I was, wow, it was a huge wow for me to be in a place where everything, every inch of the earth was covered with something, except for the places where you saw trees coming out of holes in concrete. You know, the trees, they left holes there for the trees. And in reflecting on my childhood, I really, really felt that the young people not having that was being cheated. They were being cheated from their connection in nature. Nature is the greatest school book. So once you get past these books, the ultimate place to go is back to nature. And in fact, even if you don't get past those books, go to nature. You will never have enough time to go through all these books. When I left Egypt, I said, oh man, I was studying before I go to Egypt for about 4 solid years. And when I left Egypt, I said, well, if I'm going to understand Egypt, I'm going to have to spend the next 20 more years studying. I said, well, what age am I going to be after 20 years? Am I still going to have a wife? I got to now find time for her. I got to, you know, how do I get to live and gather all this information? And the answer came back to me that you got to go back to nature. Our educational system is part of the industrial complexes that I spoke about earlier. And they are not designed to educate you. Education means to bring out of you what is in you. As we study the divine feminine, we see, and we go back to nature. If I take the seed of an apricot, for example, or a cherry, or a peanut, whatever I take the seed off and plants it, everything that tree needs is in the seed. All I'm doing is enhancing or bringing out of the seed by putting it in the right environment what is already in the seed. The same for each and every one of us. We come as a child, a baby, but all that we need is within that child. The thing is, how are we going to get them to develop to their maximum potential. The educational system doesn't do that. It prepares you to go stand in line, toss some burgers, design some phones. You know, depending on what you do, you get paid differently. But it really doesn't educate. And especially when it comes on to history, there is so much falsity that needs to be corrected that you need to just toss it all out and go do your own research. So in terms of that system, I think there's a whole lot more that needs to be done when and if we get to the point of really making it work. Arts are being taken out of school. The physical motions, the PE classes, they're gone. Our body needs motion. Our body was designed to move. Our body, this is part of the excretory system of the body. It's how we also interact. It's how we also get strong. So this is the exploration that each and every one of us are gonna have to do on our own to go look at these systems, the educational complexes, the medical, the pharmaceutical, the financial, all of these needs to be looked at, and it's going to be tough because we are in a system of competitions, and it's a cultural dynamic now because it's been practiced for so many generations. How are we going to turn that over into a system of reciprocity? It's a huge brain rewiring that we're going to have to do. So that's how I see it.
If I could just add one little thing to what you're saying. Thank you so much, Ron.
Yes.
I think it's also being done to us.
Yes.
Creation, you know, like we think we're in the driving seat always, but you know, we're really co-pilots here.
The system takes a life of its own, and it's almost out of the hands of human control. And so it shows you the creative power that we are given, that we can put things in place that can live on through time, even though it does not bring the constructive results that we want. So it is our charter now to put things in place that counters it, that can also live on. And over time, hopefully it gets absorbed by more and more people who wants to see a more fulfilling life, or, you know, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to ask because I was going to bring up this question, and I'm glad that Summer Rose brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
She's asking if trust is the highest aspect of the divine feminine, what is the highest aspect of the divine masculine, or what I usually refer to as a sacred masculine?
Mm-hmm.
And where is it, if you could help us understand, where did we lose our way?
Truth is the divine. Remember, the divine feminine, out of her came all the masculine. So therefore, if truth is the highest aspect for her, it is also the highest aspect for the male. Because the male is just an extension of the endometrial lining of the womb of the woman. And she's also the nurturer. So when she gave birth and she's nurturing that child, she has to nurture that child, be it male or female, in those values and moral systems. Because remember, she's passing on herself into that child. Now she's going to help that child develop and bring out of that child what she has put into that child. Where did we lose our way? That's a hard one to answer because you can't really put your finger on it. I haven't been able to. And even if if I get close, I may get close in one region of the planet, and I may be totally oblivious of another region of the planet. We can very much clearly say that today we do know that we have gone off the path. There is no doubt about that. So the focus for me would be, how do we get back? How do we get back? How do we find the flicker of flames that somehow wasn't stamped out throughout the historical past to light the way back to these high values, and to me it's just character development, you know, using those 7 principles.
Dana, I believe Dana had a question.
Hi, aloha. I
Aloha.
wanted to ask, who have been some of your favorite or most important master teachers along the way, either living or not living?
Okay. Well, I mentioned I have a lot. There is very little that I will not read. And there are books that are available, well, not necessarily available, but old books are some of my favorites. Here I have a 1928 edition of Webster's dictionary. And so Webster, you'll find words in here that totally means something different compared to a Webster today. So going back in history to undo the falsity, you need a dictionary. I mentioned Gerald Massey from 1800s. So old books are crucial. Old books have a whole lot of information. Arnold Hertz, the German, H.G. Wells, the historian, there's a gentleman called Constantine Samuel Rafinescu, who wrote on the American nations. A lot of these books are not easy to come by. So if you do find them, you gotta pay a pretty penny to get them sometimes. Who else? A.T. Jones from the 1800s. Frederick Hertz. Then Joy DeGruy, Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Clark, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, Dr. Laila Africa, I have 3 50-gallon barrels of books in my garage that I haven't opened up in many, many years. I don't have space for books in my home. A lot of books. You know, when you start on this journey, you got to set your purpose in terms of getting books. So when you go out to old bookstores, you walk in, you got to ask the divine feminine to guide you to your source that you're looking for. There's the gentleman who taught me the value of old books had a perfect knack for that. And he says that energy to get books was tripled or quadrupled when he had his little daughter with him. And she would just guide him, and he'd put his hands out, and you would find such rare books with so much information. And sometimes at these thrift stores, they're like for 50 cents. You go online and you see them selling for $200, $300, $400. So utilize those resources, utilize the thrift stores, utilize the antiquarian bookstores. Though when you go to a place like the antiquarian bookstores and you see books with valuable information, you may see prices of $2,000 and $2,500 and so on. And that's where you may take your phone and just snap a page. But when you start this journey, as you balance with the truth and desire, remember, as I said, your cells will resonate these energy out, and the universe will attract those things to you so that you can get the information that that is for you. And after a while, once you get a good book, you can go to the bibliography and see its references. And then that'll lead you to other authors and other books. Okay?
Yep, thank you. I used to do that a lot.
All right.
Awesome.
Melvin.
Wow, thank you very much, Brother Kawhi.
You're
I
welcome.
would like for you to speak to the feminine in Tai Chi, as you comparing it again to the masculine form of the art, and comparing and contrasting the strength in both.
Okay. The system of the art that we do is all the arts that we do is part of our culture. And so if you look at the 4 macro components of culture, you will see in the upper quadrant language, law, art, and rituals. The aspect of art can be subdivided into all categories, many categories. So you have the art where you have the artist that does his painting or sculpting. Then you have the art that does his construction. You have the art that does dance, drums. You have the art that does yoga. You have the art that does combat fighting. You have the art that sews clothing. You have the art that does culinary foods. You have the art, so pretty much everything that we do is art. When you look at the combat art and go visit, if you're interested, you probably go to a Kung Fu school, karate school, Aikido, and so you have a lot of different variations of art, and mostly we associate those coming from Asia. Much of what is taught from the masculine perspective. It's very physical, and the performance of the art keeps you in a very masculine state as you do your kata form or you do your techniques and so on. For a young person, that is okay. It tonifies their muscles, it gets them strong for tournaments, and so on. But as we age, the chemicals that are being generated when you go into that masculine form, will begin to deteriorate the joints in the body, in between the bones. And because we are already not on a healthy diet, we begin to further destroy the internal organs. So the art that I teach does have its masculine form, but it also have the priest form. And what we find is that the older practitioners of the art, as they age over 50, over 60, and so on, their joints begin to deteriorate and their internal organs begin to fail them. So as we age, what is recommended is that now we transition to the priest style. And the priest style allows the body to be feminine, and as though you're doing Tai Chi, and it is Tai Chi, and stay in relax until you're ready to deliver the blow. Then you would bring the power from the masculine side. So that's the big difference there when it comes on to staying fully masculine versus doing the complementary art, doing the art from the complementary aspect of the female and the male. Did I answer your question? Was that clear?
Thank you. Yes, you did. Are some of the movements different from the male and the female? You know, is like the Bruce Lee stuff more like the masculine, you know, what we see on TV, more like the masculine form, and then the Tai Chi movement that's more like the feminine?
The movements are pretty similar. The difference being is how you're perceiving it and how you're executing it with respect to circles, angles, and squares. So there is a mathematical science that is being also taught when you do it from the priest style. And basically, you're performing geometry in the air while you're grounded to the earth. And that geometry is what allows you to remain in a feminine order and still overcome the opponent.
Thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben.
Yes.
I came in late. Could you speak to John Henry Clark's legacy?
So John Henry Clark is an African American who I came across in the late 1999. He's an African American historian on world history. He has written several books, done hundreds of hours of lectures, and so a lot of his information is actually readily available on YouTube. But as a world historian, he has really done quite a bit of research and work in that area to uncover and put history in a perspective that for African Americans is invaluable. He was around at the time of Malcolm X, and actually, I think contributed to quite a bit of what was in some of Malcolm X speeches. But you know, in terms of world history, that's my go-to. He's my go-to when it comes on to world history. He's contemporary also with Dr. Ben, and has taken quite a few trips with Dr. Ben to Egypt also. So, you know, he has left us a huge legacy. There is very, very few progressive African Americans who would be unaware of Dr. Clark's work.
I had a question for you, Kwesi.
Mm-hmm.
And I know and I understand that all of the work that needs to happen in order for us to reestablish harmony and balance, we have to start from within individually. But how do we, as activists, as advocates, of people who are on this path of awareness and growth, how do we go back and help our communities that are holding on so much in their comfort zone and are so fearful to enter that fear zone and retract and shrink when they enter that fear zone? How do we help and support them through this transition that we're going through right now?
That's a question that's I've faced, and every one of us will face it, because the more you know, the more you want to help. The difficulty is that it may not be their time yet. It takes a lot of energy to do this work. And what you don't want to be doing is, what's the word I'm looking for? Is giving up that energy and not seeing the results in return. Then you're now going to enter the phase of burnout. So when I began to burn out and not see any results, I decided that the best thing for me to do is to live it and let that speak for itself. Let that become the way I teach. So by living what I know, the person who is to get it will get it from observing my life. And it doesn't drain my energy. And the beauty of what that does is that the person you think that you're teaching, you may not even see, because they're over on the side observing you from afar. So don't think that you're not impacting someone when you're doing this work, when you're living this work. There's always somebody who has their eyes on you, you know. And as I said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So just keep doing it, just live it.
If we can go into that a little more, Jackie, just so ripe, and Rohan, if we can go into that a little deeper, because, you know, I've struggled as an activist for so long, and as a spiritual person, everything's okay. It is the way it's supposed to be. You know, it's all for the bigger, higher picture. And but of course, you know, it's just hard to see the pain going on in the world, and we want to go out and be like at the front line and stop the insanity. But then is that law of attraction? If we're saying stop the insanity, are we creating more insanity?
Mm-hmm.
So does that just mean we have gratitude for those souls who are willing to be at the front line and pushing it the way they are? And some of us don't need to be on the front line pushing it. We just need to be vibrating it and holding the energy of peace and love. And just kind of trust that it's all happening the way it's supposed to be happening. Again, back to that.
Yeah, and if I may just add to that, Summer, because that's exactly where I was going with this, is that those of us that deeply feel, that are very open and aware of how that vibration lives within us, the suffering and the anger and the rage lives within us. How do we, as responsible spiritual beings, how do we maintain our balance and our harmony so that we can continue to radiate that and be present and say yes when those opportunities that resonate with us and our mission appear?
So your first work is you. Know thyself. Therefore, that's ultimately your responsibility. That's your ultimate responsibility, actually, is yourself. And so it is with those around you and those you're trying to have an impact on. Their first responsibility is themselves. So if you're getting frustrated, if you're getting disappointed, you have now stepped off the path of growth. Because the growth is to take you to your best self, your highest potential, your fullness of character, right? Now, that means you got to be taking care of your health, which we'll have a talk on later this evening. You got to find ways of getting rid of your stressors, okay? Because we are in an environment, we are so far from the divine that we are in an environment where everything stresses us. The children stresses us, the institution stresses us, the work, we're stressed at work. So how do we de-stress? When do we find time, me time? When do I do my yoking back to myself? That's Sankofa, yoga. That's you, finding time for you. I make time to do me before going to bed. I make time to do me the first thing when I get up. Now that's not easy to do when you have to go to work, or if you have children you got to take care of, because the first thing, first chances are they are waking you up. Mommy, when do I get this? Mommy, when do I get that? Or then it may flip to the point where you got to go wake them up, and so you got to find your time. You got to find time where you're making yourself happy, because nobody else can do that for you. Your happiness is your responsibility and yours solely. So when you look at the things that are going to cause this, this ease, whether it be anxiety, frustration, whatever, that means you have stepped off your growth path. And you got to get back on that growth path. So, it comes back to you. You got to do you. First and foremost, your highest responsibility is to you and yourself. The thing is, if you fail, everything else around you fail. So never put another person before you. So you take care of you first, and the next responsibility is to your spouse. The next responsibility after that is to your children. Your mother, father, child, the core of the divine feminine culture of Ma'at.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the anxiety component? Because we do see just anxiety just rampant in our society. What is anxiety in your perspective, and that manifestation of anxiety? What is it, and then how do we flow through that?
So anxiety is just a state of imbalance. We are frequency beings. So we are resonating and vibrating at certain frequencies. And when external conditions or internal, because, you know, as we put some of these synthetic foods in our bodies, that's going to cause a different frequency vibration. So the anxiety is just a result of, where are we vibrating? Are we vibrating and in an harmonious state? Are we vibrating and in a disharmonious state? Now, so you got to determine that within you. So, and you can tell based on how you feel, because whatever caused it, whether it be internal or external, there's your brain is the greatest chemical factory around. And any and every thought creates a chemical in the brain, a neurotransmitter chemical that affects the cells and cause them to vibrate at different frequencies. Some you will enjoy, some you will be anxious about. And, you know, in this current environment, a lot of 40 million people out of work, that's going to create some anxiety. No healthcare because your healthcare is tied to work, that's going to create some anxiety, especially if you have children. So these externalities, how they are coming at the individual is going to determine what frequency they vibrate at, and whether they're going to be in a harmonious vibration or a disharmonious vibration. And that's the state of anxiety in the body.
Melissa had her hand up, and then Melvin.
That's okay. I'll come back around to it. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm going to process that. That was heavy with the anxiety, and I need to process that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Melvin?
Oh, before, how
Okay,
do you deal with it?
Yes.
You get back into your harmonious vibrational state through yoga, through Tai Chi, through breathing. So now again, you're deep breathing, you're utilizing the male and the female principles of breath. And the male is when he breathes in, is very masculine. When you exhale, it relaxes the body. That's the feminine aspect of breathing. So now you got to utilize all of these things that is part of the cultural art to de-stress. Jogging, if you're young enough. As we get older, we don't want to jog anymore. The yoga is to massage the internal organs as you get older, versus shaking them up and down as you're young and jogging. Your body can handle that, but as you get older, your joints can't handle that. Your body can't handle that. So now you're going to have to use a different modality to release the tensions in the body and get back into that harmonious balance. Hot baths, sunbathing. So, you know, go to the beach, take a swim. All these are different ways of which you can bring your body back into balance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Melvin?
I'd like to go back to what Summer was asking about. You putting in all the work, and also Kwesi spoke to it, and you did too, Jackie. I think one of the things that we have to learn to do is not to be attached to the outcome. You know, for example, a lot of people, they see the people are homeless on the street asking for money and say, well, I'm not going to give them anything because they're just going to go and buy some wine with us, some weed. That's been attached to the outcome. If we're doing our work because we know thyself and we're doing it for the good, to be good, that's how we're putting it out there. And if we're not attached to the outcome, I think that helps prevent burnout. I think that helps prevent becoming disillusioned. It helps prevent the feel that we're not being effective. It's only when we attach to the outcome that we feel this drain, that we feel the ineffectiveness, that we could feel being overwhelmed, that we can feel that all the work that I'm doing is going to naught. But we know that as part of a interconnected, being part of an interconnected cosmos and energy, that the energy that we putting out there is not going to waste. You know, I like something, you know, in speaking to Kawasi, he really helped reinforce to me about the cellular level, how our body responds to things on the cellular level. And as he said that either it's going to respond on a cellular level and then it's going to come out, and it could come out either ways that's healthy, that's life-giving, or it could come out in ways that's destructive. And that's the anxiety. That's the anxiety, you know, because what we're doing, our mind is always through our sense organs, even when we're not aware, we're processing information, the wind, smell, sounds, touch. You see people, we're always processing it. We're processing it always. That brain is always processing. When it's processing, it's not just processing it up in or here, it's a cellular level. Mm-hmm. And the feminine is really, really more intuitive to this. I've learned, you know, like I was talking to a client of mine and she said she was raised by her father and that there was nudity, but she never felt he was creepy. You know, not she said he would come in there and, you know, her breast would be open and she never felt it was creepy. You know, it wasn't like he was sneaking in, but he would see her in her breast. And that's the feminine. That's the cellular level that we was talking about. And that was also inside of him. So what I'm saying again is that I kind of digress, but not being attached to the outcome and this thing about the anxiety, that cellular level that's coming in us, how information, how sensory information is coming in our body and we're processing it and it's creating the anxiety. And I like what Kawasi was saying about how we can deal with that anxiety. We definitely need movement. If you cannot, I don't know anybody get rid of anxiety without some movement. You gotta have movement to get rid of anxiety, you know? And so in the different forms, there's so many different forms of movement that we can embrace, that we can learn, that can help us deal with anxiety. And what I'm learning is that this movement, it's on a cellular level. It's not just like you're moving a muscle. No, it's all cellular stuff that deep within on a cellular level within us. So I just wanted to share that, you know, let's try not to be attached to the outcome. You know, I worked in the behavioral health system for a very long time, and the counselors, the agency, they were always attached to the outcome. When they was attached to the outcome, they would come up with a policy. They would do something to smash on a client worse. Well, you know, we got him, we did this for him, and he just threw it away. Mm-hmm. And then so now you got to ratchet up the ratchet. So you increase the medication. You take this privilege away from him. You because you attach to the outcome. Mm-hmm. No, people, parents get physically abusive with each other because they attach to the outcome, you know. We just have to learn to put it out there, and this is something that I'm learning, okay? You know, I'm, you know, in my latter years, and I'm just now learning this. Don't be attached to the outcome. Just put it out there and let it work.
I had a question with regard to the traditions and how, through the divine feminine, how is childhood perceived? I know we talked about education, but that stage and the essence of childhood, how is it perceived? What is childhood?
In the African cultural dynamic, the children in the village is pretty much linked by age group, and every 7-year cycle they had their roles and responsibilities that they would go through. in the worldview of the African culture, every adult was either a father figure or an uncle figure, or an auntie figure or a mother figure. And so it was the role of the adults to ensure that the child welfare is looked after. And so your role and responsibilities was attached to your age, and the children of that age would actually go through life together, right? And every 7 years you go through your rites of initiation into that new age group. By your second or third cycle, for the males would be taken away from the village and be taught how to be self-sufficient, how to provide, how to be apprentices for whatever business direction they were going to go into. The females would be proficient in knowing how to care for children, for the home, and to be head of household. So by the second, third cycles of the 7-year period, the third to fourth year cycles, so now you're in what, 14 to 21 and up, you were a functioning adult, right? You could get married and have your own household and run that own household and run your business. The nurturing of the child was primarily the mother, but the village also made sure the child was nurtured. And by participating in the cultural dynamic that was happening, whether it be the African drum and dance, and the drum and dance was central to all ceremonies that was performed. And the ceremonies started from birth through each rite of initiation cycle. The drums are played for the planting of the crops, the reaping of the crops, going to wars, going to battles, birthdays, marriages, you know, so the whole ceremonial traditions was always accompanied by the drum and the dance. And in the drumming and in the dancing, those are arts of itself that taught rhythm. Everything was rhythmical. So you work to rhythm, you walk to rhythm, you dance to rhythm. You know, everything involved the rhythm. And the rhythms were polyrhythms versus monorhythms that we find more on the Western cultures. So these polyrhythms develop both sides of the brain, the left brain, the right brain, the female and the masculine brains. So we are in a culture where we are more left brain dominant, masculine side, right-handed, whereas in that culture, both sides of the brain was always exercised because of the polyrhythms that we did, which requires left brain, right brain activities. So the child was literally reared and taught based on the rhythmical movements of the whole society. You know, when the mother went to nature to gather food or wood or water, that child was attached to the back of the mother. So he felt the rhythmical walking motion. He felt the motion of her washing. He felt the motion of her cooking. So all of that is a bonding and a transference of education that was totally wrapped up in that union.
Wow. Wow, that just took me to a whole other place just now. I just need to take a breath. Because it reminded me of the African drumming. And we've never really gotten into that component about your talent and your skill about the African drumming. Do you feel, well, here's my question. Learning musical instruments for children, art and music, is that embedded in the education of children in the African perspective? And do you feel that that's such a detriment to our children now, that
Oh,
most
no,
children don't even know how to play an instrument?
no doubt, no doubt. When I started learning how to play the West African djembe, and I saw the intricacies and how demanding and delicate and left brain, right brain requirements of it all. And I met the master teacher. So my master teacher in the African drums was Mamadi Keita. And another master teacher, Keith Johnson, who lives actually here in Phoenix. When I met Mamadi Keita, I said, Mamadi Keita, tell me, when did you take the time, or did you take the time to go off into the woods by yourself and practice and learn? And he says, no, you heard this rhythm from you were in the womb. You danced to this rhythm when your mom danced. We came out the womb playing the drum. Now, to learn a few of these rhythms, I would spend years. So I said, did you go sneak off and play? He says, no, you only play the rhythm at that time of the year when it's played. Yeah, talk about me scratching my head and pulling my hair. Okay, so it was innate. It became epigenetically written upon their DNA.
I just want to jump in here because Mamadi Keita was also my teacher in Brussels.
Awesome! Woo!
Yeah, and Toma Keita. Yeah, awesome, awesome musicians.
Yes, yes, he is.
And I just want to say about the arts and artists. Well, of course, all of us are artists, but I'm a visual artist, and those gifts are God-given. Like, I cannot say where the art that I make comes from. It comes through me. And I think as artists, we just have to, we open up to that, whatever is flowing through us. And I believe that's what Mamadi is doing as well when he talks about the beat. Like he's got the beat was there, always implanted in him, and he just opens up to the beat, and it's there, it's present.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Rohan, thank you so much again for being here. I'm so excited to have you back. I just want you to be a permanent part of this community. And on that note, I just wanted to share with you our main focus right now. We've got a lot of things we're working on: cooling the planet, feeding everyone, developing this community, et cetera. But our biggest focus of all is feeding everyone, and plant-based foods, and on a large scale. So, and we talk about that from 7 to 9 in the morning Pacific time right here, and then 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So later this evening with Dr. Silas Rao. I would like to invite you to participate because you're bringing so much of the holistic, from childhood, divine feminine, family, music, drumming, frequencies, everything. Because I'll just admit to that I often come from this kind of from a logistics and engineering, how do we get truckloads of lentils and truckloads of brown rice and all that? But I just notice we're missing you, Rohan. We need you. So My name is Harvey Milk, and I'm here to recruit you. My name is Jamin Shively. I'm here to recruit you. Anyway,
Okay, Jamie.
I'll just put it out there on the table.
Yes, yes, yes.
Melvin.
I just want to, I met Kawesi probably about a month ago. And I met him through one of his students, Ben, who's an awesome young man. Ben was telling me about he was learning the martial arts in a particular form of martial arts with Kawesi, and they was doing the drumming. And my first thing, I said, I want to go, but because of my age and certain physical limitations, I said, I'm more interested in learning the drumming versus the martial arts. But when I went there, Kwesi, he came and he invited me to start doing the martial arts. But when I went there, I told him what I was interested in. And he said, well, sure, come on, this is Tai Chi, what we're doing. And it is, and it's so beautiful. And he's teaching me the drumming. And this is what I want to say, is that it appears right now that Kwesi's patient is infested. It is unlimited. Because I am the most awkward human being in the world. One of the most. And he is so patient with me. He is so patient. And I just want to put that out there. You know, if anybody is listening that's in the valley, you know, and you want to learn drumming or you want to learn Tai Chi, and you want a teacher that's really patient, and he teaches in such a loving way, you know, there's no demands at all. And I just want to put that out there and let him know that I really appreciate him taking the time. And it took him years to learn the arts like he knows the arts, and all the knowledge that he's sharing with us. It took years, and he's sharing that with me for penance, really, for penance. And I want to thank him for that. One more thing I was saying, I just wanted, and I'm going to be quiet on this. I've been, you know, I'm going to be celebrating my 69th Earth Day celebration soon. And one of my journey that I'm on, I'm going to go into my latter years strong with this Tai Chi, because it's the feminine. I could do the feminine. I can't do the but I can do the feminine. So I'm very excited about it, going into my latter years with the feminine, doing the Tai Chi. I know I can do that, and I want to thank him for that.
I just have to say, this is just the juicy love bath. This is the most yummy, warm, and cuddly, and delicious bath I've had in a long time.
Awesome, awesome.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you guys. Like your shine and your radiance, it's just, I just love how bubbly and effervescent you are. So thank you for contributing the way you do. You just make the energy great in here. Kwesi, I want to thank you so much again for coming here, for sharing with us, for contributing the way you do, and opening up this space. It's beautiful. I do plan on joining Melvin. He's invited me to do the Tai Chi and the drumming, so I'm very interested. Yes, and I plan on doing that very, very soon. And I also want to invite everyone back for later, for 5 p.m., where Kwesi will be back to discuss nutrition and health from the African perspective at 5 p.m. Pacific this evening.
All right.
And thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Love you all.
All right.
Thank you, Jackie and Melissa and Myra and everyone. I want to acknowledge Fallon, who's joining us from, I think you're still in Brooklyn, Fallon. And I'd love for you to say a few words as we wrap here, if you'd like. And then I also want to invite everyone to stick around. The next segment's going to be super cool. It's A World Beyond Money is the name of the next segment, led by Brett Warshawski, who should be joining soon. Anyway, Fallon, you want to say a couple words? Say hello? Not to put you on the spot, but just it's just great to see you back.
Hello, hope everyone is well. I'm Fallon. Happy to be here again. I haven't been to the block party in a minute. Actually thought about you this week and thought about reaching out to discuss something too. Hello, Jamie. Brother, I absolutely enjoyed like all of it. And my mind was just absolutely buzzing, thinking that, how am I going to convince him to talk to me for like a week straight, you know, just to go over like all of the things that are just buzzing in my head that I would love to connect with you. Thank you. I'm humbled by just the insight and the depth of wisdom that, you know, you obviously carry, and appreciate it. Yeah. We need this in these times, you know, with mimetic force.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
Well, with that, I'd like to say thank you again, everyone, for being here. Like I said, I love you all, and we are doing this. And the more wisdom and the more connection and the more healing, the more light.
That's right.
So thank you again, everyone.
All righty. Thank you all for having me.
We love you. Thank
We
you
love
so
you,
much
Rohan.
for being here.
We,
all of you.
We want you here all the time. And Rohan, just so you know, and Fallon, you'll appreciate this update as well, everyone, is we are in the process of going from, you know, a big event on Tuesday and a big event on Friday to literally 24/7. So this channel, this same link, the same Zoom link that you're on, that we're all on right now, we're now going 7 days a week. We start at noon, typically. Obviously today, Friday, we started at 7 in the morning. But the goal is to get to 24/7 so that the campfire is always lit and the drumming never stops. So no matter what human being anywhere in the world, they always know there is a place to come. I want to acknowledge Christopher up in Canada, who keeps the fire lit late at night, right? Summer Rose lights the fire early in the morning, that the campfire never go out. And that therefore this room then becomes sort of like a hub, a portal to the other different meetings that are happening, you know, both within our network and outside of our network. So that ultimately we create a network of networks, humanity connected 24/7. And there's always people talking about food. There's always people talking about cooling the planet, so that these fires, these lights never go out, because we need to act quickly now, and we need to act together. So I just want to invite everyone to keep coming back. After the next 2-hour segment of World Beyond Money, the following 2 hours will, from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time, I always talk in Pacific time, from 1 to 3, we'll be working on the very organization of this network and roles and responsibilities and all kinds of good stuff. So I just want to invite everyone to make this your home. Right now we're in the middle of the block party. We're a few hours into the 24-hour block party. Block party is real easy. Just come and go as you please. Bring your friends, right? It's real easy, right? So just make this your home. Welcome home, everyone. And welcome back, Jamie. See, we got Jamie dialing in from Holland. We got folks from Canada, Mexico. We've had like close to 30 countries participating in the block party so far. So we're discovering that we're not so different. We're not so separate. And we all fundamentally want the same thing. All righty. Well, I do not see our next speaker on yet. Brett Warshawski dialing in from England, Northern England, for a World Beyond Money, but that's okay. We can just hang. We can take a few minutes break if we need it. And I'm sure we'll be picking back up here very soon. Meanwhile, I'll stop this current recording, pause it rather, so we can always add to it.